We are live. Okay, I'm going to share my other screen. Okay.
All right.
Well, this week we're going to do the Ajax topic and then kind of coordinate on what we want to focus on next week. Michael, have you turned in your code review thing? I haven't done that yet.
I haven't done my first one yet. Nope.
I haven't either. And it's essentially, you said, just like an email, right? That we send him with a link to.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like a letter. You have to write a letter and request this and tell him why you deserve it, and it's kind of involved. They have an example.
Okay, I'll have to look more into that.
It's in the email in week 1.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I'll look into that more. Ooh, more involved, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll get ready for that. All right, so last week we took a little bit of a look at Ajax. So that's what I got here. So I just made 2 examples. One simply gets data on button click, and that happens because I've got a specific URL hard-coded in there. The other example I've got is, I call it dynamic because it will auto-load the contents of the select, and then as I select one, it gives me the contents for that. So this isn't like a fully realized example because it obviously wouldn't make sense to spit this data out on your screen. It's more of just a proof of concept at this point. So let's kind of dive into the first one as far as the code goes.
Can I ask a question about the list? What was on that big long list of your dynamic version?
So this is a list of all my available repos on my account.
Oh, that's right. You told me that like last day or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, those are your repositories.
Yeah, these are my repos. So okay, so let me go back to the first example. We'll start a little bit simpler and then okay. So the code I've got here, let me make it bigger so you can see it better. Is that better?
Yep.
Okay. So I made 2 functions. So I'm going to pull up my ajax.html and show you this. Okay, so there's the first thing you want to know is that I've included the JavaScript in an external Java or an external sheet. What do you call that? External script.
Right.
At the bottom of the page. So that's where that's happening. I'll reference that here in a second. But my button, which I click, has an on-click event, and it's going to call a function called request data. And in here, I pass in the request I want to make. So in this case, I want to get repos that I own, and I specifically want to get the repo called ADTs. Now, the reason I know to do this is because I looked at the GitHub API, scoured the docs, and it told me that if I want to retrieve a specific repo, this is the format I have to do it in. So what this translates here to is this is just like a URL, and it's just the part of the URL which is making the request. So this URL has /topics/ajax.html in my browser. This is the specific one I want to get from the API. So then, okay, so now let's go to my Ajax script. So here's my function, which I've referenced. So I called the parameter endpoint because that's the endpoint of the API I want to reach. Now I have another variable here called root because this is the API that I'm going to reference it with. So what this becomes is my root concatenated with my endpoint, and then that gives me the fully realized URL that I need to request that data. Now, you might think, well, you could have just hard-coded it, which I could have. Completely valid to do that. The reason I do this is because if I wanted to change the repo, I could simply change repo here to another name. So this could be just some other repo that I pass in, and then that allows me to grab the data specifically for that repo. I also could have, let me back up there. I could have actually just passed in this part right here and had my base URL longer. You can do it a lot of different ways. The reason I do this is because this is everything after the base URL where you can make any kind of request that you want. So that gives you that flexibility like that. But you have that option of formatting that how you want. All right, so then that's what I pass into my AJAX function. My AJAX function is something I created right here, up here at the top. And it takes a URL and a callback function. Okay, so Michael, do you remember us talking about callbacks like 2 weeks ago, I think it was?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you remember the purpose of a callback function?
Well, we used one when we were doing Facebook. I mean, the purpose is to bring back information from the source or the.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. That was perfectly put. So a callback function just makes the reason they call it a callback is because once the asynchronous event is done, it's going to notify you. So they call it a callback. So it's kind of like, well, I was going to make some example, but I think it's just confusing. So I'm not good at making examples like that.
So what I mean, so it's really just reaching the end of its task, and it's going back to you.
Exactly. That's the reason it's used. It's so in this case, callback you see referenced right here in the code. So this is, you don't have to worry about how every single part of this works, but just know this is what you need to use to make an asynchronous event. So XML HTTP request. And I don't know this for sure, but the reason I think that it's specifically called XML is because it's dated. What I'm saying there is that XML was used a lot more in making asynchronous events like a decade or two ago. And then as the web has evolved, there's more event like requests you could make, like a JSON request or things like that. So I think when they first made this, they called it XML because of that reason, because XML was kind of the standard at the time. Could be completely wrong on that, but just know that this makes an asynchronous event. That's what that object does. So then you see I've got a variable here called XML HTTP. I reference it here. This block of code here, what this is saying is it says, okay, so once I've received my request, I want to check to see if it's a 200 status. Do you remember what 200 means?
No.
200 means okay. So whenever you have header requests, you can send different types of requests. So have you ever gotten to like a 404 page where it says unable to process request or page not found? Just like if you were using Facebook or something and you got to a page or you spelled a page wrong and then it says 404 page not found. There's different web codes that can be used to specify different states. And so in this case, our status is equal to, if it's equal to 200, then we know everything's okay, and then we can process the request. If anything else comes through, we're just going to ignore it. You can also say else and then handle the request somehow like that. So those are different web codes. Let me see if I can get you an example of that real quick. So if I go to amazon.com/this is wrong. Sorry, we couldn't find that page. And if I inspect it, it says failed to load resource. The server responded with a status of 404 not found. So 404 means not found. If you have more questions about that, I can send you articles about that. That may be a new concept. Okay, so then the next two lines here, open and then send. So open specifies the type of request I want to make. I want to make a GET request because I want to get data from the API. I'm going to pass in the API I want to use, which is my URL. And then true, I actually don't remember what that does. I'll have to look that up for you. And then XML HTTP send will actually start the request. So this XML HTTP is an object, and this listens for a change event here. So whenever the request comes back, then we can send the data that we receive to our callback function. So here in Ajax, the function we were just referencing here passes in our URL, but then we also pass in a callback function right here. So we're passing in the response data, and then we post that data on our page, just like that. So that's a lot. That's a lot. What are your thoughts? How you feel about that? Oh, it looks like we lost Michael. Let's see if I can get him back. Okay, so Michael has left the building, probably had some technical issues there. I'm going to actually continue going through this. That way when it's posted on our board, we can go back and reference it. So, all right, so dynamic Ajax here, you see a lot of the same code. So in this case, I've actually specified a 404 error. So I've kind of fleshed it out a little bit more, and then I can pass that callback here. So in my request here, my Ajax, I can just spit that 404 out on the page, which is kind of a simple way to handle that. But I could have said like if 404, print some error message there. All right, so some things to know here. So let me go to the HTML. So on this one, I have a select dropdown. I'm passing in my request, just like last time. There is something different to note about this though. So I've got a select here which has no values in it whatsoever, but I want to change that. So I've given it an ID called repos. So you'll notice here, I'm getting that element by its ID, and then I'm going to populate that select dropdown with all of the data I received back from my asynchronous event. So I've made the Ajax call here. This time I just hard coded in because I know exactly where I want to get it from. Then my callback function there. And if you want step by step, you can actually just go back in the video and look through that. Okay, so then the next part, whenever we load the page, we just want to make that request. So we call populate dropdown, which is a custom function I made here. And then this will perform that asynchronous event when the page loads, and then puts all this data in my option here. The second part of this page, hey Michael, welcome back.
Geez, my modem went down. I had no lights on my modem.
Oh, you're totally fine. I actually assumed that, so I just sent you the request. I actually just continued going on in the tutorial.
Okay, great.
That way, when I post it, you can just like follow along in that way.
Okay, the last question that you asked me was about the 200. So you answered that question and then you went on?
I did, yeah. So
okay.
I'll just kind of finish this off right now. You probably won't get what I'm talking about, and then you can kind of go back and reference it, and then we can just talk at the end about any questions you have or anything like that.
Okay.
All right, so I just talked here about how when the page loads, I populate the dropdown. This function just fires off an asynchronous event and grabs all of my repos. And then in my callback function, I populate all of my options in my select dropdown. the second part of this page is the on-change event. So you'll notice this, my select has an on-change event which fires a request, and it passes in the current value of the select. So that's when you saw on the page whenever I made a selection, it automatically updated the data asynchronously. So then that also makes it a request to request data. And then in there, I just output it to the screen, just like the last example. So that's pretty much it. To kind of dumb that down a little bit, I say the key components to Ajax is first, you have to fire the event. So you have to, well, before that, you have to know the name of the API. So if you have the name of the API and know how to reference it, then you can fire the event, and then you handle the data. So you have to know the location of the API, you know, the type of request you're making, fire the event, and then handle the data when it comes back. So that's the big part there. You can absolutely go back to this video and hopefully be a little bit less confused about it. But the reason I brought this concept up so early in the semester is because it's a lot to chew on. So I thought it's probably best that we do a little bit of this every week along with other stuff we're doing. That way we can, you know, hopefully by the end of this class, you're at least a little bit more comfortable with it. And you can take this knowledge and become a master at Ajax.
Okay.
That's the goal, right? So, so tell me, what are your thoughts about Ajax so far?
Well, I mean, what you're doing with it is very similar to what we did with the Facebook app, as far as just going back and forth. But I find it interesting the way you divide things up. You know, like you were talking about your Ajax root plus the endpoint function. You know, I mean, you kind of like define things offline and then call them back in, you know, to get what you want.
Right.
So I didn't see the whole flow though. So I'll have to look at the video, I guess.
Yeah, and then just shoot me. I mean, whenever we meet again on Wednesday, or just chat me, say, hey, I'm super confused. That was the worst thing I've ever seen. And I'll be like, okay.
No, it started out good. I was really engaged. And
so
kicked out.
A little bit about, I know that you said I was just showing, did you see the example I showed for the 404 error? Before you went? Okay, so you'll see that again as you review it. I'll just show it to you real quick because why not, right? Amazon.com. So you'll notice that I'm doing Amazon.com. Now I'm just going to go to something that I'm pretty sure is not a valid URI. So I'll go like something that doesn't exist. That means I've requested a page that they're like, we don't actually have that. We can't find it on our server. And then if you go here to the console, it gives me a 404 error, means it's not found.
Okay.
So that's a web code. You can find out more about that as you go to 344. You can go and search on W3 and it shows you all the web codes.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
For the 100 say continue, 200 say okay. Then there's even like different types of 200 codes. 300 have to do with redirects. 400s have to do with errors. And then, oh yeah, so there's different. So 400 errors are client based.
Mm-hmm.
And then 500 is server based.
Mm-hmm.
That gives you some more information there.
All right.
Should we talk a little bit about Wednesday?
Sure.
As far as teaching schedule goes, where do we want to head next?
Let me look at the teaching schedule. What does it say?
Because we had 3 members of the group now we just have 2. As long as we cover all topics, I think we can kind of be flexible. We could take a break from all this JavaScript business and move over to some CSS and stuff like that if you want.
Okay, I'm trying to find the link I have here. Meeting scheduler. Where is it?
I can chat it to you. I just found it from an email you sent me.
Okay, I thought I had it on my page of links. So you're gonna,
I'll just chat it to you real quick.
okay. Yeah, so we're gonna start week 5, huh?
Looks like it.
All right.
Yeah, so it looks like we kind of jumped ahead.
Yeah, you did talk about, so you started to talk about Ajax. So where will Ajax take us from your talk today?
As far as what will we still need to do on it?
Right.
I would say, so I covered a lot of concepts from Ajax today. I'll do a little bit more research to see if there's things I've missed on it. I wanted to kind of just cover it quickly and up front in the semester. That way we can like resolve concerns as we go along. Because it's kind of if you haven't done Ajax before, it's kind of a weird thing to deal with.
Okay.
So I thought we would, we have it listed that we go over it 2 weeks, but we can kind of spread that out a little bit more too as we need it.
Okay, and Brother James said something about the DOM manipulation. He said he was going to provide us something that won't so that we don't suffer too much through it. So I don't know what, I really have no exposure to DOM, so.
Yeah, so let's do that next week then.
Oh, really?
Yeah, let's do it because that's a good next step, I think. So I think that was supposed to be week 8, but I think that's a good stepping stone from what we were talking about.
Okay.
So yeah, you'll notice there on row 7, it's got DOM manipulation using create element, append child, insert before, remove child, etc.
Okay, so it's just about object handling objects and stuff.
Sort of. So let me see something real quick. Let's see. Let me see if I can get you. All right, so my assignment, if you are bold enough to accept it,
Okay.
is this one. Here, let me send you a link. Where's my thing? Oh, there it is. Okay. Is to go through this.
Okay. Where did you? Oh, you gave me a second. The W3 school.
So what this does is this just gives you a basic intro to the DOM, which is the document object model, and it explains from a kind of simple level what it means and get you started that way.
Okay.
Let me see. Go through. Yeah, this is good.
What, just the intro? Or you want me to go down the list?
Do you see the next button? How there's like,
Well,
it like continues on.
yeah, there's methods and then there's document elements.
Yeah, I would say just go for as far as you feel comfortable. So if you start to feel overwhelmed or something,
All right.
too much information, you can just kind of stop there.
Okay.
So
I'll make another boring presentation.
that'd be awesome.
All right.
And that'll get us ready for Wednesday. And I will also try and do some code examples for
Okay.
Wednesday as well.
All right. And I promised you something about Canvas.
Oh, did you get it?
Yeah, I did a little research on Canvas.
Oh, awesome. What'd you
It's
find out?
basically it allows you to how can I say it, to designate a size of a kind of like a board. That's why it's called Canvas, I guess. So you can pick the size like you do the size of an image or something like that. You can tell it how many pixels or whatever, the size of it, and then you can basically draw text, draw graphics, do animation, and even game stuff. Let me see.
So I can show you real quick. This is a project that I did.
Oh, you use Canvas?
Uh-huh.
Oh,
So this is the game of Snake.
Okay. Yeah, they have a little game too.
So this is what I decided to do. For one of my classes when I was at BYU, we had to program the game of Snake in C. And I just was kind of bored and wanted to see if I could do it in JavaScript.
What's with the extra square that?
Yeah, so it's a little broken right now. I need to fix it, but for some reason, like not taking up the whole screen. So you'll notice that.
No, but what's that lone square that the snake kind of goes around and sometimes engulfs or something? Is it eating that? Is it supposed to be like eating that thing?
Oh yeah, that's supposed to be the food.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it needs some TLC, but.
So you use the Canvas tag for that?
That's the Canvas tag for that one.
And then the literature said that it's basically mostly JavaScript is what makes the thing happen.
Yeah, so all the Snake stuff is JavaScript that I put in there. So.
Okay. Yeah, they had they had a pretty neat site. Oops, I lost the site. Where they actually give some full page, pages of code, and they have like fireworks displays or bubbles, kind of like a screensaver type stuff.
That's cool.
They got bubbles, tiles, dots, exploding dots and things like that. But they do have the code right there, so it's kind of a nice site. I don't know if you here. Let me send it to you.
Okay.
If I can find it, there you go. Yeah, it's a pretty neat site, and like I said, it provides the code, which is I like just copying code.
Yeah, that's always nice.
But
saves time.
Yeah. All right. Well then, DOM next Wednesday, huh?
Yeah, let's do it. The DOM and see what other kind of trouble we can get into.
Okay.
All right, awesome. And I'll post this video to the community board.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. We'll see you on Wednesday.
All right, bye.